Now I join in the fun, which I'm really happy to do, to introduce some of you to, and just remind you all of Padmavajra, who's here tonight to give the talk and begin his week of celebrations and presiding over many, many events that are going to be happening this week as part of the handover. But also partly Padmavajra is just here again to lead study, to meet friends, to join us here at Sangha night, do all the amazing things that Padmavajra does as our president. He only arrived this afternoon, had a little quick nap, and now he's off. And he won't stop until you're back on the train again on...
When is it? Whenever it is.
Whenever it is, at some point. But it's quite 10 days. It's quite long, isn't it? Yes. So it's a long one this time.
I've got a day off.
You've got a day off. Good. So we were trying to work out how long it's been, Padmavajra being our president, and we think it's about 15 years. We could say some things about the flourishing of the centre, along with Satyajyoti being chair and Padmavajra being our president. It says a lot. His energy and love of Sheffield Buddhist Centre is absolutely, well, everyone knows. Oh, you're looking at me. Everyone knows and loves Padmavajra's energy, the way he is able to be with us as a friend. And that is how he translates the word president. It sounds very lofty, doesn't it? But actually, what he thinks of that is as a friend. He's a friend to Sheffield. He was ordained as a teenager, I'm right in saying. A teenager. And that was in 1976 when I was in New Brighton Bath sunbathing and swimming. Padmavajra was getting ordained by Bhante Sangha, and that is next year 50 years. So this man has been ordained for 50 years and spent a lot of that time in his younger days in India, living in India and teaching the Dharma there. A very important part of his life, and which reminds me of what's happening on Sunday. On Sunday, we've got Ambedkar Day, which is a celebration of Dr. Ambedkar, a very important figure in Triratna Buddhism. And Padmavajra is going to lead that day. So if you don't know anything about Dr. Ambedkar, would like to know, or would you just like to come and be involved in an event that Padmavajra is leading? That's happening on Sunday from 1 o'clock. So bring food. We're going to have a massive Indian feast, lots of lovely things happening on that day. So just arrive at 1. That would be fantastic. There's going to be a very lovely shrine, an abundant, beautiful shrine. And so that's a great thing. Just want to put that in, that it's something that Padmavajra is going to be doing. All those things he does for us as president. But actually, I was asking Sangajiva what it is about Padmavajra that makes him such a good friend. And he said there's kind of an intuitive thing that goes on with Padmavajra when he knows you very quickly, knows you and remembers you very quickly, and sees you. He really sees you. And I think that you couldn't say anything nicer about Padmavajra. Yes, so I think that's all we've got time to say. Could go on for ages and ages and ages. But Padmavajra is here to end the series that we've been doing on the way to the deathless. He's finishing this evening with the talk for the end of that series, and we have no idea what he's going to say. But I'm sure it'll be wonderful. Just to quickly squeeze in before I leave now, that's the Sangha Works Day on Monday. It's such a fun day. You get your lunch, you get ritual, you get friendship, tea, lots of rests, lots of breaks, and we get to really tart up the building. So make it beautiful inside and out. So if you want to be involved in making our centre even more beautiful, then come. We really, really need help to do that together. And it's such a lovely thing to do, to be part of that team. So 10 o'clock arrive until 4 o'clock, but just come when you can come. So I think that's it. Next series, thank you. The next series, see, he knows what we're doing here more than I know what we're doing here. The next series is on the White Lotus Sutra. Who knows? Who's ever heard of the White Lotus Sutra? Who thinks it's completely mad? It's absolutely, well, I find it hard to say what the White Lotus Sutra is. But come along and find out next week. Padmavajra is going to start us off on that new series. So
I'm not starting.
I looked at Pranya Hridaya, pointed at Pranya Hridaya, and said Padmavajra.
That's my day off.
I meant Pranya Hridaya is starting us off next week. Is it? Hope he's not watching. Sorry, Vidanya. Start again. Rewind. So next week is the White Lotus Sutra, and it's going to be fantastic. It's really mad. It's great, isn't it, Padmavajra? And Vidanya's going to start us off in the new series next week. Padmavajra.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's very, very good to be back in Sheffield. Very good to be back in the Sheffield Buddhist Centre. Very good to be at Sangha night. I travelled up this afternoon and then was whisked off to lunch with Satyajoti and Bodhinaga. So I got the two chairs, and they took me through my program for the next 10 days, and it was really, really good sitting and talking and sharing different perceptions of things. Very, very pleasant to be with the current chair, not quite gone, and the chair in waiting. There's such kind of maturity in the Sangha here, and so much warmth. I mean, it was very evident with that little presentation to Satyajoti, listening to Bodhinaga and listening to you, and the warmth of this room, the warmth of you all. I've come to really appreciate that since I've been coming here. That this very, very strong emphasis on friendliness and Sangha, spiritual community. It's one of the sort of hallmarks, if you like, of the Sheffield Buddhist Centre. So I'm very proud to be the president of the Sheffield Buddhist Centre. It's a real honour for me. I come twice a year, and I always look forward to my visits. It's always very stimulating. I like being in Sheffield. I like Sheffield as a city. I feel very comfortable in Sheffield. I always feel like I'm in a big village rather than a city. So I'm very happy to be here, and very happy to be rounding off your series on mindfulness, on awareness, the way to the deathless. And I had a quick look at the different themes that had been covered. And in a way, well, what can one add to this all important part of Buddhist practice, essential part of Buddhist practice? I'm sure you've heard the great stirring verse from the mindfulness section of the Dhammapada. Mindfulness is the way to the deathless, unmindfulness the way to death. Those who are mindful do not die, whereas the unmindful are already dead. Very stirring words indeed. I once quoted that to a Sufi Muslim, and he was really inspired. He said, "Oh, is that what mindfulness really is?" I said, "Yeah, in Buddhism, that's what it really is." And he was very, very impressed by that. I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction, if you like. We're still very much concerned with the theme of mindfulness or awareness. Of course, when we talk about mindfulness and awareness, we start thinking of, well, I am aware of that. I'm aware of this room. I'm aware of these people. I'm aware of myself. So we're talking very much within the framework of self and other, subject and object. Quite rightly, that's where we have to begin. We have to work on ourselves. We have to work on our unenlightened selves and move in the direction of enlightenment. But of course, there is a way of talking about awareness where you have to think of that awareness doesn't take place within the self and other subject-object framework. There's a very famous Buddhist teaching called the Four Reliances, or even the Four Refuges, where you give up reliance on something and you rely on something, well, more reliable. So the fourth of these reliances, one must rely on transcendental awareness and not on dualistic consciousness. One should rely on transcendental awareness and not on dualistic consciousness. In the words, the traditional words, one relies on jnana rather than vijnana. Most of the time we're relying on vijnana. That's our ordinary, everyday consciousness that sees everything in terms of self and other, that is mundane, that is of samsara, that is to do with conceptualizing, evaluating, and so on. And it has its place. We know it has its place, but of course, ultimately, it's deeply flawed, because vijnana is bound up with craving, bound up with hatred, bound up with delusion. Jnana, which actually comes from the same root as vijnana, it means to know, but jnana, in this sense, is very Is that better? No. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. So we need to start moving in the direction of relying on jnana. But how on earth do we do this? It's very interesting. I was listening to a lecture of Sangha, our teacher, that he gave in the 1990s, and he was saying it's absolutely paramount that we rely on jnana and not on vijnana. He even said that is the purpose of Triratna, to introduce people to jnana and to wean them off vijnana. It's very, very strong language. And he was also insisting that there's a hierarchical difference between jnana and vijnana. Vijnana is of the world, jnana is of nirvana. But it's not easy to do. It comes after the fruit of deep spiritual practice. It comes after after practicing mindfulness of breathing, metabhavna, the precepts, living a committed spiritual life. Then gradually you start to get glimpses into what this jnana is. And this way of talking, moving from vijnana to jnana, really is related to that school of Buddhism called the Yogacara, the practitioners of meditation, who had a very profound insight into the nature and structure of consciousness. They saw that we actually have 8 consciousnesses. Very, very interesting analysis of the human being. So we've got eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, touch consciousness, mind consciousness. In other words, these are all consciousnesses. The 6 senses are 6 vijnanas. We're very familiar with those. Then you've got, at a deeper level, and this is very important to understand, a much deeper sort of structural level, you have what's known as the Klishto Manovijnana, the defiled mind consciousness. This is the consciousness that sees everything through a filter, a distortion of subject and object, of self and other, a real self here, a real other there. And this tradition says all the problems in the world, all the problems in life are created by this consciousness, this ego consciousness. Obviously, we have to use it, we have to refine it. We can't pretend to not have it. Sometimes you get these so-called non-dual teachers talking about awareness without self and other. They talk about, you can see them on infinite number of YouTube channels. And to me, it looks like an intellectual game. It doesn't convince me. It seems very shallow. So somebody would say, there is only walking. There is only seeing. There is nobody walking and nobody seeing. There is just walking. Well, you can play with language, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're undoing that deeply held conviction of self and other. The great test, of course, is of whether or not you have broken the subject-object dichotomy is when you get annoyed with somebody. I've met lots of people who've told me they're egoless, but you watch it when when you disagree with them, suddenly the aggression starts coming out, and all the aggravation. You think, not so non-dual, are we? And then they tell you, well, the anger's an illusion. You not understanding it might look like anger to you, but and you sort of realize, you really lost it, haven't you? You're really heavily into delusion, and you don't know you're deluded. That's very, very dangerous. This is why spiritual practice has to be taken deep down, because there's another consciousness, another vijnana that the Yogacara talk about, called the Alaya Vijnana, or the store consciousness. And the store consciousness is very, very interesting indeed. You can't really be conscious of it. All of our volitional actions of body, speech, and mind are sort of stored, or the traces or the seeds or the effects of those actions are stored in this ever-flowing, ever-changing, deep consciousness. And out of that, when certain conditions arise, those actions will arise. If you like, the karmic effects will arise. Because we have this sense of continuity, which the Alaya Vijnana gives us, we turn that into a self, and I turn you lot into another. So this is how this sort of system works. It's very, very interesting. And they say in this tradition, to undo this deep sense of self-centeredness, you've got to go very, very deep in meditation. You've got to live a life, when I say going deep in meditation, I don't just mean deep meditative experience. It means a life of continual awareness, of continuous ethical awareness, a life of complete dedication. Then there's a chance of a really important turning. The big experience, if you like, for the Yogacara, the crucial turning point is called the Paravritti, or the Ashraya Paravritti, the turning about in the base, or the revolution in the base, the turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness. This is when the effects of your spiritual practice sort of expel all of the potentialities that keep arranging the world in terms of fixed self and a fixed other. That all gets turned around. There's a great expulsion of all that self-centeredness. It's sometimes even called a sort of, what's a kind of revulsion in relation to sort of self-centeredness and selfishness. And then there starts to open up jnana, this non-dual, transcendental awareness, pure awareness, which is, as I've said, very hard to describe, very hard to sort of do anything with. But fortunately, the tradition has given us a bit of a clue as to what the qualities of this awareness might be. And they relate it, this particularly develops in Tantric Buddhism, they relate the qualities of this awareness to different Buddha figures, different atmospheres. It's quite interesting, different moods, different seasons, different environments even. This is the way it really develops in Tantric Buddhism. In other words, getting you out of the idea that knowing is intellectual, is cognitive. It's much more that when you break through to jnana, your experience of life becomes more like, this is the way our teacher describes it, it's more like a relishing. It has an aesthetic quality to it. There's much more of a sense, not so much, it's not the self and other when it goes, there is just this sort of blur, there's a kind of mush. It's not that, it's more like there is just a field of awareness with different sort of dimensions to it, but there isn't a sort of hard division between self and world, self and other and environment. So I want to try and evoke the jnanas, the qualities of jnana to the best of my ability. So the sort of central jnana, the jnana that sort of, embodies all jnana, all the qualities, is called the Dharma Dhatu jnana. The awareness of the whole of existence is reality. It has been described by one great teacher as panoramic awareness. You are just sitting, if you like, in a field of totality. There is no, if you like, no breaks in awareness. It's sort of symbolized by the sun, the midday sun, in the vastness of space, lighting up everything as it is. There's no deludedness. There's just clarity without anybody possessing any clarity. Everything is meaningful. Everybody is meaningful. Everything is significant. Not as a set of ideas, but as something immediately, if you like, felt, I suppose. Can't really say very much about that wisdom of the Dharma Dhatu. It's symbolized by a white Buddha named Vairocana, the great sun Buddha with his golden wheel of reality. But then you can get perhaps more of a sense of what that might be by looking at the four other jnanas. So let me go into these. So this Dharma Dhatu jnana has a quality of incredible clarity. And this is described by what's called the mirror-like jnana. The mirror-like jnana. So there's a quality in this awareness, this non-dual awareness, this transcendental awareness that reflects everything as it is, with absolute clarity. Very often when we are relating to things, and it's interesting, we use the word relating. That word relating is very often, it's a very self-centered word. I can relate to that. I can relate to that. We're in a relationship and so on. It's very static language, I think, in some ways. But when we're often relating to something, if you like, we're like a mirror where everything gets stuck. We stick to people, we stick to ideas, we stick to things. So there's no clarity, usually because of our craving and our aversion and everything else. But in the mirror-like wisdom, everything is reflected as it is. There's even a sort of sense that everything is seen as if it's like a dream, as if it's like a great magical display. So there's a sense in which whatever arises passes. You're engaged, if you like, in life. You're not cold or anything like that, but you're very, very aware of arising and passing. So you never sort of fixate. The kind of feel of the mirror-like wisdom is winter. You imagine one of those really cold, crisp winter days, snow and ice and blue sky and sun. Everything is really crystalline. Everything is, really reflected. It's not cold in the sense of being emotionally cold. It just had this immense clarity, this seeing things as they really are. So this quality of jnana has this mirror-like quality. And this is associated with the deep blue Buddha named Akshobhya, the immovable. There's a very solid quality to this aspect of jnana. You can't sort of mess with this jnana. And the symbol that's associated with it is the Vajra, the diamond thunderbolt. The diamond is adamantine. You can't turn over this kind of quality of awareness. Then there's another aspect of this jnana, and that's another quality, which is called the samatha jnana, which means the wisdom or the awareness of sameness, sometimes translated as the wisdom of equality, but sameness is the more literal translation. So there's a quality to this jnana that sees the sameness in everything, the fundamental sameness in one another. Perhaps we'll just stay on the sort of human level to begin with, that this sameness jnana doesn't divide people up, doesn't sort of categorize people, into races and castes, into anything. It's a very human aspect of this jnana. Sometimes, when one talks about non-dual wisdom, it can all be a bit cool, can't it? It can sound a bit alienated, but it's actually very warm. It's very, very human. There's a great warmth to it, a great abundance to it. This is symbolized by the yellow Buddha Ratnasambhava. And the mood of Ratnasambhava is sort of it's sort of late. It's where is it? It's kind of autumn, really. That's the way I think of this. It's this quality of tremendous abundance. It's that quality of golden cornfields, orchards. In orchards heavy with fruit. It's that very warm sun. It's has a very giving quality, this samatha jnana. And somebody who has this samatha jnana, they're giving evenly. It's said of the Buddha that three things, he said of himself, three things shine equally on the world, whether it's on a dung heap or on a golden roof palace. Three things shine equally: the sun, the moon, and my teaching, my Dharma, my teaching. I am not one of those teachers who have a tight fist. I don't have what they call in Sanskrit the acharya muti, the tight fist of a bad teacher who holds things back, gives to some but not to others. No, there is this abundance, this generosity. So a sign, if you like, that you're moving, I think, towards jnana is that you relish everybody you meet. Absolutely everybody. You find that point of contact, that point of connection, and there's a generous response. There's a kind of wealthy attitude, even if you didn't have anything. Even if you were a complete pauper, you would be giving. People would feel that you're giving. Sangha, our teacher, was very fond of a line of Walt Whitman's, the great American poet. Behold, I do not give lectures and a little charity. When I give myself. That's the quality of the samatha jnana. This wonderful, even giving. Not that you're trying to be fair. It's got nothing to do with that. It's more that there's a sense of abundance, of giving out. So in enlightenment, in enlightened consciousness, there's an overflow. There's an extra giving. You're not even, in a sense, doing it to benefit anybody. You're not trying to get them enlightened. That would be far too contrived. It's more that happens just by virtue of your communication, of your being. So that's the samatha jnana, and this lovely sense of the warm south, in John Keats's words, the warm south. And then there is the wisdom of particularity. This is Amitabha's jnana, the red Buddha. It's often translated as the wisdom of discrimination, but the Sanskrit word, which is quite a long, complicated one to say, so I won't try, it literally means the wisdom that sees the particularities of everybody. This is really interesting, isn't it? That this jnana that we're talking about, it can see the sameness, but it also can see the individual particular, if you like, William Blake's words, the minute particulars. It glories in the minute particulars. And this is associated with springtime, this time. I mean, this time is wonderful, isn't it? It is the time of tremendous particularity. I mean, just coming up with Bodhinaga and Satyajoti in the car, the pink blossoms by, where is it? Yeah, oh, what a sight. What a sight. You know, and it's absolute, they're so distinct against the blue and everything else. Everything is so vivid. I was walking around the nature reserve where I live, nearby where I live, and you know, just relishing that particular green of grass you have this time of year. It's such a quality. Well, you don't have to wait for spring with this jnana. It's always there. It's always seeing the particular quality. It's very much associated with love and passion. This jnana. It's sort of transmuted love, passion. You know, when you love somebody very, very much, when you're in love. I don't know about you, but you know, when that used to happen to me, I get very interested in all the particularities of the beloved. You know, the eyes, the hair, you know, the way they walked, the way they talked. You know, you sort of hang on every sort of aspect. You get this, don't you, in Sufi poetry, especially, where you get these very, very detailed descriptions of the face of the beloved. You know, the eyes, the kohl around the eyes, the lips, the gait, you know, and you get all this, you know, wonderful poetry describing it. And of course, these are all descriptions. These are all portals, if you like, doorways into reality. That's the nature of this kind of poetry. There's entryways into the truth itself. So this quality of jnana has this sort of fascination with the particularities of everything, relishes it, rejoices in it. And of course, this is very much associated with compassion, in the sense that compassion, the way compassion in Buddhism is, it's not sentimentality, it's not pity, it's seeing the potentiality in others. Seeing their particular individual potential, not potentiality as an abstraction, you know, not as a nice idea, but seeing a particular quality that could be developed and drawn out. So this is associated with this red Buddha, Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light and infinite life. And then the final jnana is the jnana of action. It's sometimes called the all-performing jnana, the all-performing awareness, the all-performing transcendental awareness. And it's associated with a deep green Buddha of the northern direction, named Amoghasiddhi, whose name means infallible success. And Siddhi has connotations of magic. It's a magical effect. So in other words, this jnana is to do with activity. It's very, very important that if it's real transcendental awareness, it will move you to action, but action that isn't egotistical. You know, so often even wonderful, good Buddhists that we are, who, you know, maybe when we're doing a lot for Buddhism in our way, we can really make a meal of it sometimes and sort of, you know, kind of congratulate ourselves on how hard we're working. And I'm seeing so many people on this visit to Sheffield and doing all these study groups and all the rest of it. And what a good Buddhist I am. And, you know, and you know, on a bad end. Do they appreciate it? Yes, they do. Of course they do. But that means, you know, to the extent that I have that, I don't have the jnana, because the real jnana, the real awareness that plunges into activity is egoless. It does it because it's fun, it's lila, it's play. And Amoga Siddhi has this quality of mysterious activity. An Amoga Siddhi type person, if there was such a thing, they'd sort of enter into a situation. Things would happen, wonderful, marvelous things would happen, but people would sort of think, hang on, who was that? What was that? Amoga Siddhi is associated with the element air or wind, movement, passing through, having an incredible effect. He's associated with strange hybrid creatures called kinnaras, which means, kinnara means, is that a man? Because they're half bird, half human. Is that a man? Kinnara? Who clash symbols. They're the supports of Amoga Siddhi. In other words, he unites opposites. This jnana unites all the opposites, if you like, the inner life, the outer life, samsara, nirvana, all those dualities are dissolved in this activity. The feel of Amoga Siddhi, the feel is the north. It's high summer, and we're talking about wonderful sort of deep green forests. We're talking about fallen logs. We're talking about, you know, that humidity that you get in those places, damp places. We're talking about thunder, distant thunder, sort of blue-black skies. We're talking about mystery. We're talking about strange activity, which is transforming people. So this is the wisdom of Amoga Siddhi. So I've tried in this talk to evoke this quality of awareness through talking about these different realms, these different Buddhas. In the end, of course, when you're in this world, you're not even thinking about it. A Buddha doesn't think about what jnana he's in. His activity is natural and spontaneous. You know, when he's with somebody, there is an immediate response to their need, to what they want, to what they need for their life, for their spiritual life. So this is why I was saying that it's a play, a natural play, a natural activity. But it's possible to achieve this. The Buddha taught this. Our own teacher is saying you need to rely on jnana, not on vijnana. Get out of negative comparisons. I'm better than him. I'm better than her. I'm not better than him. I'm not better than her. We're the same. We're equal. All that comparison. I'm not good enough. I can't live this life. There's so much of that. Or I'm the big I am. You know, why isn't everybody seeing my wonderful qualities? All that is vijnana. All that is the evaluating mind. What, to the extent we're doing that, we're not in the life. We're not plunging into the life of awareness, where you're just living spiritual practice, meditating, observing the precepts, meeting spiritual friends, studying, helping out at the center, doing your things, you know, you're taking your responsibilities for your families, your friends, your workplace, plunging in and living this life fully. So I hope I've been able to evoke something of the nature of the jnana that we will one day arrive in, and perhaps we've even had a little bit of a taste of since we've taken up spiritual practice. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Padmavajra. Thank you for dealing with the sound issue. It's a bit of a nuisance, isn't it? But thank you for that. So Padmavajra has spent his whole life, more or less, teaching the Dharma. And we can really see all without notes. You know, the profound teachings of the Yogacara, bringing in the color and the light and the beauty of the Buddhas that some of us might be familiar with, right down to every day, what are we going to do to wake up today? And that was just really beautiful and clear. Thank you. Padmavajra suggested that following his talk, we could have questions. Instead of going into groups, we have the treat of asking Padmavajra anything we like, following on from that. And then, so we've got plenty of time to do that. So we'll have some, if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, that would be appropriate now. And then at about 8:30, we'll have a break. And then after that, when we've had our break, Padmavajra is going to lead us in meditation. So shall I give you the mic back, and then you can just take any questions that anyone might have. Thank you.
What's the difference between Vijnana and Prapancha? Well, let's look at Prapancha. So Prapancha literally means proliferation, doesn't it? Well, it's actually a very rich word. I mean, it means sort of proliferation, extension. It can also mean employment. It can mean busy. In Garma Chang's translation of Milarepa's songs, he translates Prapancha as play words. So it's this idea that your mind is just, proliferating, even creating a whole reality. In a sense, you could say Vijnana is a term trying to describe the more, if you like, it's pointing to sort of structure of, if you can use that language, of perception. Prapancha is one of the things that happens because you believe in a real self and other. And I think you can sort of see how that works. So, okay, so I can give you an experience last night. So in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was thinking, I'm going to Sheffield tomorrow, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing that. And then when I get back, not long after that, I've got to lead this retreat, which I have to lead and plan. And before I knew it, so there's me. I have to do all these things. There's the sort of Vijnana. There's the self and all the things this self has to do. And then there was this, all the mental proliferate, how am I going to do that? What's going to happen? I don't think I can do it, and all the sort of tension. Fortunately, it shut down pretty quickly. I went to sleep, got up this morning, meditated, and suddenly everything was clear, without any thinking through. And I found that quite interesting, that I think when you have mental proliferation, there can be a thinking, I've got to work this out. I've got to work this out. But it's sort of obsessive and driving you. And you've sort of created a horrible world in which you feel trapped and frightened. And it actually changes the way everything looks, especially in the middle of the night, you're sort of closing in. Whereas letting all that go and in meditation opening up to something outside of the usual perception of things, everything becomes clear. And you're inhabiting an entirely different world. Yeah.
Hi, Viviananda. I'd like to pick up on the meditation theme. So in your talk, you're talking about this profoundly different quality of awareness, and meditation being an important practice towards that. I wonder if you could share something with us about your meditation career, some things that helped you in that direction. I'm not asking you to talk about your attainments, but
Thanks very much.
It can feel a little bit daunting for us
Yeah.
here at Sangha night, wobbling around on cushions.
Yeah.
But maybe something about how we might go in that direction.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad I don't have to talk about my attainments. For me, a really central practice is metta bhavana. And always has been really from the beginning. Developing loving kindness, and I think it really is a wisdom practice, because I think it is the meditation where you can experience directly a sort of dissolving very positively of your sort of the boundaries of yourself in a very, very practical way. I know it's a practice that not everybody finds easy, but I do it every day to some degree or other. And I find it an absolutely crucial part of my life, because it changes the way I see people, and in a sense, it changes the way I see myself. Because there are times, I think, with metta that, and it doesn't necessarily happen within the sitting practice itself, where you can start to sort of feel, well, I'm not so separate from others. There is much more of a flow between myself and others. And the thing about metta, as with all meditations, is that it's very important to think of it as a slow dawning, rather than a great sort of immediate kind of flashing forth. You might have moments of sort of flashing forth, but it's much more that you're sort of, I sometimes experience metta as, there was a period where I was doing metta 3 or 4 times a day, and there was this sort of sense that I was just pushing, so just persistently pushing against the gravitational pull to selfishness and self-centeredness. And all I had to do was sort of resist that and just think more about others, just give my attention to others more, throughout the day. And it wasn't about having an experience. It was much more about setting up a different volition, so that my center of gravity was less about me and more about others. If you like, my field of awareness was more, as it were, out there, which included me. Of course it does. It could not, it would not include me. So that I feel is a very immediate practice, for dissolving the distinction between, self and other. Yeah. And when I say the metta bhavana, I mean the classic 5-stage practice, which includes the neutral person and includes the enemy. We use the euphemism, the difficult person. Well, we're the difficult person. The person we have aversion to, we dislike. It's really important, I think, to be honest with ourselves about the sort of state of our emotional responses. And I sort of like it if I've got an enemy, somebody I really don't like, and I know they don't like me. I quite like that. It's sort of because it's something you've got to really work with. You're being, the practice is revealing to me my actual state of consciousness. I'm not enlightened. Far from it. There is this block. But slowly, things start to turn around, start to change. Yeah.
So as I'm speaking, I'm trying to structure this question. Does one have to find a balance between the jnana and vijnana, or is it like just we have to focus on vijnana specifically?
It's more, well, Vignan we've got. We've got that divided consciousness, that's there. I think it's much more, and another way I could have approached this talk was thinking in terms of refining our self-consciousness, thinking not so much getting rid of it, but refining it. You get this in traditional Buddhist practices where most typically Shantideva, the great Bodhisattva Shantideva in his teaching on meditation, and it's a kind of metabhavana meditation, he takes the notion of self. So he makes the point, well, we're really important to ourselves, aren't we? You know, we really want to look after ourselves, protect ourselves. We don't want to die. We don't want to be treated badly. You know, we're really, really important to ourselves. But you're not special in that, because each and every single living being is exactly the same. They're the same as you in that they cherish themselves and they want to protect themselves. So stop just thinking of your own welfare. Why not identify with everybody else and their selves? Why not do that? And when you start to do that, again, there's this shift in your center of gravity. You've used, if you like, vijnana in the sense of a divided consciousness to move more in the direction of jnana. You see what I mean? Yeah.
If you're dealing with people who are very much in that dualistic kind of way, you find that, ironically, that could kind of distance you as you're moving towards non-dualistic.
So the question is, do I find that I move away from people who get into very dualistic, self-centered ways of looking at things? Yeah. I suppose is a bit hard for me to say, because I live entirely within a Buddhist environment these days, and I have for a long time. So, and it's not that we're free of duality. It's not that we're free of being ego-centered, because we're still working away on things. But we have an aspiration to do that. You know, so in the Padmavajra community in which I live, I think there's, we're going through a very good phase at the moment where I think there's quite a high degree of consideration for one another, and a high degree of consideration for people who come on retreat and things like that. Don't always get it right and so on, but I think it's quite apparent. I think when people are, what will tend to happen, I think, when you take up this kind, when you practice the Dharma, you'll gravitate to people who share your values or your aspirations, and you'll find it, not always easy to be with people who don't share that. That does happen, and that can be quite poignant, because especially if you've got old friendships and loved ones and people you care for, you don't love them less. In fact, you love them more. But it's difficult because being with them can sometimes you can't be sort of fully you, if you like, and they get upset because you're not doing the fun things that you used to do with them. So that could be quite a poignant sort of period, I think, that needs a bit of sensitivity on everybody's part. Yeah, is that the sort of territory you're interested in? I think it's a quite natural thing that happens, but it doesn't make it always that easy. I mean, I used to see it typically with mum and dad, and my sisters, coming home from my Buddhist world, and when I was a teenager, trying to convince them of the truth of emptiness over Sunday lunch. Hopeless. I mean, I was naive. I mean, and quite rightly, they kind of brought me down to earth with a bump. And then I realized, in relation to them, was that there was a certain point where it's, well, why do you expect them to honor what you're doing? Why not go home for them? Don't expect deep communication, in that kind of grabby way. I mean, sometimes people say to me, I can't have deep communication with my parents. I say, well, what do you expect? That's you wanting deep communication. You don't go home for deep communication. You go home to be interested in your parents, on their terms and help out. And when I realized that, everything changed. And then we could sometimes get into heart-to-hearts about their concerns, their life, the lives they've led. And I found that really, really important. So what I'm saying is sometimes, I want everybody to get my Buddhism. And well, in a way that would be lovely, but maybe we've got to be a bit more skilled in that and show interest in the other person. You can be confident in your Buddhism. That's going to be shining through anyway. And you get into heart-to-heart communication. Yeah. Which isn't easy always. Yeah. What will happen when? So the question is, Mel's asking, if I had more of an idea about what will happen when we die, it will help me how to live now. Is that the sort of territory? So is that to do with will I be reborn and all that, or yeah. I mean, the traditional Buddhist view is of course that you when you die you will be there will be a re-becoming. It's not a sort of and sometimes people say, well, if Buddhism says there is no fixed self, how can there be rebirth? But of course, what Buddhism will say, well, right now there isn't a self. What there is a becoming, independence on this set of conditions that are arising, the next set of conditions. There's a continuity, but there's nothing sort of absolutely irreducibly permanent in any experience. And that just goes on into future embodiment, the future becomings, if you like. But of course, whilst, that's the traditional way of looking at it, the fact is, it's a mystery, isn't it? We don't know. I mean, some people have died and come back, and they can tell us. I know there's people here that's happened to. But we face a great mystery, and I think the way I rather like that actually. I rather like that thought. I suppose the way I want to live is that I come to those moments of mystery, because there's literal death, but then there's sort of deaths in life. It's interesting with Satyajoti stepping down as chair, Bodhinaga becoming chair. It's clearly, these are big things in their lives. There's the ending of a very, very particular, life, and the emergence, and Satyajoti is going into a very open life. That's a sort of death and rebirth in this life. And those things sort of happen, perhaps as we get older or we face sickness, and we don't quite know what's coming. And I suppose what I'd like through my practice is again not to fixate and hold on to some imagined idea of how it should be, but to open to that mystery. I mean, I think in some traditions they translate shunyata, this notion of emptiness, as the mystery. The unknown. Actually, everything is unknown. Even this very moment is unknown. We think, oh, well, this is all going to go on. We'll come to the end of this question and answer session, go and have a cup of tea, and we'll come back, and then we go home. And, well, hopefully it will work like that. But actually, it might not. Something might happen, that we hadn't bargained for. So there is this sort of sense of openness. It's another rendering of the term shunyata, openness. You've got an open heart, an open mind. And I suppose what I hope for, I aspire to, when it comes to the moment of death, I can open, to what's happening and respond to it, create as creatively as I can. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, jnana is definitely not dependent on embodiment. You know, it's not dependent on anything. You know, it's, you know, this is why that you get in some Buddhist traditions, they talk about things sort of self-existing. It doesn't mean self in the usual way we think of self. It's more, it's unconditioned. Without, you know, and when you start getting into this territory, it's, you know, you just get a lot of blabber, you know, and I'll just be blabbering and not saying anything, you know, and, you know, and I always think careful now, because a Zen master is going to appear behind you and give you an almighty whack and tell you to be quiet.